Welcome into Locked On Phillies. The Phils swept by the Cubs and now a big series with the Braves to try and stop a slide. All of that on today's Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Been talking Phils baseball for years over on 97.5 The Fanatic on the radio. Happy to be here with you now as your host of Locked On Phillies. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. This episode today is brought to you by Blue Nile. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And going on now is the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale. You can save up to 40% on classic fine jewelry pieces and 25% on classic or on engagement ring settings. So shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. All right. So you already heard my thoughts on the Nick Castellanos-Jim Salisbury interaction. We put that episode out earlier, but here is, of course, the baseball-related part of what happened this weekend between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Chicago Cubs. And there was nothing good for the Philadelphia Phillies. I'll tell you what, man. This team is struggling right now. I know they swept the Marlins out to end the first half after going on a 4-game losing streak, but then they come out of the All-Star break and they lose 3 to the Chicago Cubs. Yeah, the Chicago Cubs who are going to be sellers at the deadline. The Chicago Cubs who came into that series 22 games down under 500. And the Chicago Cubs that have no right playing against a team of the Philadelphia Phillies caliber. And it was a lackluster offensive performance. It was a lackluster pitching performance. It was not what you'd expect to see from the Philadelphia Phillies starters, from the Philadelphia Phillies offense. The defense was rough. I don't know what to say about that series other than hopefully it was a rust knockoff, anomalistic post-All-Star game series. It doesn't mean that the Philadelphia Phillies are now no longer playoff contenders. They absolutely are. They're right in the mix for the third wild card spot. They're going to stay in the mix until the end of the season. I firmly believe that. There's no reason to not believe that, regardless of what just happened against the Cubs. But man, when you can't beat a team like the Cubs even once in a 3-game series, that's a bad, bad sign for where the team is at right now. And you know what it feels like to me, honestly? It feels like the Phillies have been, I always have said, out over their skis a little bit. Now, not as much as some people think, where it's just like, how in the world are they winning games? We still have talented players on this roster, even when Bryce Harper and Gene Segura are injured. But here's what I mean. The Phillies needed to tread water until they could get some reinforcements. And those reinforcements could be Ranger Suarez and Zach Eflin coming back. Suarez, of course, healthy now, but Zach Eflin still not available, so you got a spot start every 5 days by either Bailey Falter or Christopher Sanchez. Not an ideal way to handle things. So that's one. Gene Segura coming back, who Gene Segura actually starting tomorrow. He's starting a rehab stint in AAA Lehigh Valley. So it sounds like Gene Segura is getting close. We could see him in the next week or two, which would be a huge boost for this team. They could use it. Bryce Harper, and we got some unfortunate injury news on Bryce Harper as of today. Well, not that unfortunate. So he was supposed to get his pins potentially pulled out of his thumb. He had 3 pins, I believe it was, put into his thumb to stabilize the fracture that he had when Blake Snell hit him by that pitch back in late or mid-June, whatever you want to call it. No, we'll call it late June. He had pins put in his thumb, and he had an evaluation to see whether or not he was ready to have the pins come out of the thumb, which would mean he's healing and he's getting closer to a point where he can rehab and get back and everything like that. Unfortunately, the little doctor's visit that he had to check on those pins, he's not where they want him to be to get the pins removed yet. So what that means is, well, they're going to reevaluate, they said, in a week and see if he's ready then. It's not really a setback. It is more of a, hey, they hoped he was ahead of schedule. He wasn't. we'll take a deep breath, and we'll see where the pins are on Monday and if they're ready to come out. Monday being next Monday, not today, obviously. So still a little bit of a wait for Bryce Harper to come back. No reinforcements coming there anytime soon. The other thing, though, is the trade deadline. And we're going to have a big show. I'll preview this a little bit more in our final segment today of exactly how I'm going to do it. But we're going to have a big trade deadline show. The deadline is August 2nd. It's only 7 days away. We're on July 25th, 31 days. Yeah, I believe that's 7 days. Yeah, depending on how you count what days, if you count today as a day. The trade deadline's a week away. And we're going to have a big preview of the trade deadline and moves that Dave Dombrowski and the Philadelphia Phillies could make to bolster this roster. So we'll get into all of that, and you'll see who the potential reinforcements are that way. But it's still a week away, and it almost feels like the Phillies have been fighting to tread water, right? Imagine this. They're shipwrecked, and they're out in the middle of the ocean. They're treading water, and they're treading water. And all of a sudden, after forever of treading water, you finally see the shore. You were like slowly doggy paddling, or you finally see like a boat off in the distance. And you almost relax a little bit and you get close to the trade deadline. You've been doing it for so long. They're starting to come back down to earth, like you're exhausted. That's what it feels like the Phillies are right now. It feels like everything's starting to catch up to them as far as the hot stretch they were on without some of their best players. And they're starting to sink. Their head's starting to bob below the water a little bit. And the good news is they basically made it to where they need to be. With the trade deadline, Gene Segura potentially coming back, they just need to hang on for another week or so and not completely implode. But either way, and that is all a long-winded excuse that I'm going to now say, regardless of that, you still have to be able to win a series against the Chicago Cubs. You still can't afford to get swept by one of the worst teams in baseball in Citizens Bank Park on your home field. Like, that just can't happen for playoff teams. That's reminiscent of the late season series with the Miami Marlins from 2020 and 2021. But I've long preached, I don't care what they do in July. I don't even really care what they do in early August. The great teams that make it in, that end up making the playoff push, make a big push in late August and September. That's when you need to be hot. That's when the best team gets hot. Peak at the right times, push your way in, take advantage of what still is a very easy schedule, even though you didn't against the Chicago Cubs this past weekend, and you're going to find yourself in a playoff spot. So is it ideal to lose these series? No. Do I care if they lose these series? Yeah, it stinks. I was very annoyed with the Philadelphia Phillies this weekend, but in the grand scheme of things, the time they need to peak is not late July. It's late August, early September, late September, and that's how you get in. So let's slow down. Let's see what happens at the trade deadline, see what reinforcements and improvements they get, and see what this team looks like in about a week or two's worth of time. And hopefully they'll do enough to win a couple games to stay afloat like they have been doing for the past month or two. And then we'll be in a better spot post-trade deadline. So we'll get that all squared away and keep an eye on where they are in the standings for the Philadelphia Phillies and the NL wildcard, and if those two sides are going to end up being matches at the end of the season, meaning will the Phillies end up being in that final wildcard spot. The one other thing I want to say about this weekend series, 2 of the 3 games being on a streaming service and only on a streaming service. Are you kidding me? Come on. Like Apple TV and Peacock getting 2 games exclusively in the same series, in the first series back from the All-Star break, is just ridiculous. Baseball constantly makes it harder to find their product. I don't understand who that's benefiting outside of the streaming services. And listen, yeah, you can make short money by giving some games to a streaming service and get paid that way if you're Major League Baseball. But in the long run, you're turning off fans. If they can't watch the game, what are we doing here? What is the point of playing it? And that this was a weekend where, luckily, because the Phillies played words I can't say. They played bad baseball. I'll just say that to save myself from getting into trouble. Because the Phillies played like that, like a bad baseball team, it was lucky they did it now because no one could watch them. But stop putting games on streaming services, please. Or if you're going to, just put them on the same streaming service so you don't have to flip around and wonder if, I got so many tweets, where's the Phillies game? I got calls on the radio Sunday morning. Why isn't the Phillies game on? And it annoys me, but hey, we're back to the normal NBC Sports Philadelphia setup. Tonight, against the Atlanta Braves. And coming up next, we'll preview that series with the Atlanta Braves here on Locked On Phillies. All right, let me tell you about our friends over at Blue Nile because they're having a great deal right now. But first, let me tell you about them. Maybe you're ready to pop the question, or maybe you're celebrating a milestone moment like an anniversary, a birthday, something special like that. Well, you can find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile has simple online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, clarity, and even the ring setting style. And Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft the perfect engagement ring for her. It's one of a kind. Who doesn't love one of a kind stuff? You don't want some cookie cutter ring that 1,000 other women have out there. No, you want a special one, special for her. If you're just looking for, everyday regular wear jewelry, you can go ahead and find that as well. Because Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7. They're available via phone or chat, and they're able to help you pick out the right piece at the right budget, whether it might be a pair of earrings, a nice necklace, some bracelets, a ring, anything like that. They can help you out with that. So make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And going on now is the Blue Nile anniversary sale. You can save up to 40% on classic fine jewelry pieces and 25% on engagement ring settings. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. So shop stress-free. Shop stress-free. I lost my words for a second there. And find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. All right, it's time to preview the Philadelphia Phillies' upcoming series with the Atlanta Braves. I promise my words are going to start sounding like actual words here. I don't know why I lost it for a second, but let's jump into the series with Atlanta. Now, a big one with the Braves. Not that the Phillies, I think, have any chance of tracking down the Braves or the Mets in the division. But hey, you play the divisional games. You play an opponent you're more used to. It always feels like a little bit of higher stakes. And if the Phillies can take a couple from Atlanta, they play these 3 games, 4 games at Pittsburgh, and then 2 more against Atlanta. If they can steal like 4 of the 5 games against the Braves, hey, maybe we start talking about overtaking Atlanta at some point later in the schedule. Still a lot of time to go in the season. So something to keep an eye on. But this series specifically at Citizens Bank Park will start tonight at 7:05 p.m. And the first matchup is Ranger Suarez facing off against Max Fried. Now, Ranger Suarez, we know what he is this year. Max Fried has been outstanding for the Atlanta Braves. He's got 10 wins already on the year. Now, a lot of the Braves players, or pitchers rather, have a lot of wins because the team has been the hottest team in baseball for the past month or so. But he's got a 2.64 ERA, good for 10th in baseball. He's unbelievable ERA-wise, 109 Ks, so he's not striking out the most batters, but still has the strikeouts working, and a 1.06 whip. The Phillies have an uphill battle if they want to beat Max Fried tonight, and it's going to be tough. Like, if you struggle against the Chicago Cubs, you're certainly going to have trouble against the Atlanta Braves when it comes to pitching matchups. Now, Ranger Suarez has been heading in the right direction. He's got a 7-5 record with a 4.07 ERA, 68 strikeouts, and a 1.42 whip. Those numbers have been steadily improving as we got into July, and he had a little bit of an injury to work with, but end of June, he was getting better. His last start was pretty solid against the Marlins, so hopefully we're seeing a little bit of a righting of the ship when it comes to Ranger Suarez, but that is game 1. You have a chance there. I got to give the advantage, though, to the Atlanta Braves. In game 2, Aaron Nola takes the mound for your Philadelphia Phillies, and Spencer Strider is the guy who will toe the rubber for the Atlanta Braves. He's got a 4-3 record so far, a 3.03 ERA, so not bad, and 114 strikeouts. Not a lot of results for Strider as far as wins or losses, but a lot of strikeouts, and he's a guy that's going to K a bunch of people if you give him the opportunity, which the Phillies, well, this year they have been given the opportunity for strikeouts. A 1.05 whip, so another minuscule number there. And this is another pitching matchup. Well, when you face the Braves, all the pitching matchups are going to be tough. It's part of the reason why they've won as many games as they have in the last stretch of like a month and change. But that's a tough matchup for hitters. Oh, if you're not familiar, by the way, with Spencer Strider as well, you're looking at a guy that is 23, so he's young, and the Braves just keep coming up with these young pitchers that find a way to dominate at the major league level right off the jump. He is a righty, so hopefully, some of the lefties in the lineup could take advantage. I don't have a lot of faith in the Phillies offense right now because they are kind of all slumping. at least post All-Star break. But hey, maybe they'll break out in this series. Aaron Nola has a 6-7 record with a 3.13 ERA, 137 Ks, good for 6th in baseball, and a 0.91 WHIP, good for 4th in baseball. The ERA is a little bit higher than Strider, but the Ks are way higher. The WHIP is lower. I got to give the nod to Aaron Nola as the better pitcher in this game. And hopefully, if the Phillies are going to steal a game, it'll be the one that Nola starts on Tuesday. And then the series ender, Kyle Gibson, will take the mound for a second start of the second half. He did not look good against the Cubs in the first game of that series with Chicago, but he gets a chance to bounce back against Atlanta, and he'll face Charlie Morton, who Charlie dominated the Phillies last time these two teams faced off against each other. Morton's got a 4.2 ERA, though, 121 strikeouts. So he's going to be a strikeout guy. The ERA is a little bit higher than I'm sure he would like it. And 1.23 WHIP. So probably the most hittable pitcher that you're going to see in this series based on just the numbers with Charlie Morton, another righty, and a Flemington, New Jersey native. So, of course, if you played baseball in the New Jersey area growing up, Diamond Nation is up there, one of the main showcase spots for baseball prospects in the New Jersey area. Played up there a bunch of times growing up when I was considered to be a very low-level baseball prospect. But so he'll get another hometown start for the Atlanta Braves. But Kyle Gibson will want to spoil the party for Charlie Morton, and hopefully the Phillies can beat him this time around. Gibson has a 4.69 ERA with 80 strikeouts and a 1.24 WHIP. Obviously more of a contact pitcher, we know, but a guy that has a chance. So I'm going to call it a wash between Morton and Gibson. We're going to give Nola the advantage against Strider in game 2, and I'm going to give Max Fried the advantage tonight over Ranger Suarez. So we will see how that goes. We already know the usual suspects in the Braves lineup, the Dansby Swanson of the world, Ronald Acuna Jr., guys like that you're going to have to keep an eye on. But this Braves team is good. This is going to be a fun test for the Phillies, and I don't think they're going to get swept by any stretch of the imagination, but you got to be a little bit nervous after what you saw against the Cubs to then have to see a team like the Atlanta Braves. So hopefully a bounce-back performance by the Phillies. Coming up, I'm going to tell you exactly what we've got on the docket for Locked On Phillies this week with a lot of stuff going on. Trade deadline, some injury issues, things like that. A lot going on in the Locked On Phillies world and a lot of content going to be pumping out as we get ready for the second half to really kick into gear. I'll tell you about everything that's coming up next in our final segment of today's Locked On Phillies. But first, I want to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline.net, they're the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. You can find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, the National Football League, National Basketball Association, National Hockey League, combat sports, esports, even golf. A couple leagues of golf out there. I'm sure PGA is probably the main one, though, that they're focused on. Not those other guys. Still, you can find all the information you need to make your smart bets and try and make some money. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They've got you covered. So head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action and the action happening today. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, so just going to wrap up today with a little bit of a conversation about what we have coming up. Now, the trade deadline is August 2nd. Right now, it is July 25th as I'm recording this. So about 7-8 days away from the trade deadline, depending on how you slice it. We'll just call it a week. We're going to have a preview of a couple pitchers and a couple position players that should be the biggest targets for the Philadelphia Phillies come trade deadline time. I don't know if Dave Dombrowski will end up getting these guys, but I have guys in mind that I want to take a look at. It's probably going to be about 7 or 8 pitchers, 7 or 8 position players, and then a couple guys that I don't think are actual targets, but that are interesting to me to see where they'll go. Guys like Juan Soto, guys like Shohei Ohtani, where there's some rumors out there, and I don't know exactly what's going on with them, but some interesting conjecture. So we will have a fun show that's entirely talking about the trade deadline. I'll get that out sometime in the next week where it feels right as far as it fits into the content and it's pre-trade deadline. I do think we're going to start seeing some moves as early as maybe later tonight, tomorrow. This week is certainly going to get a little bit heating up as we go to Friday, and I'm not just talking about the temperature. So I'll get it out sooner rather than later, but be on the lookout for that and looking at what the Phillies could also potentially have to give up to bring some of these players in. So There's great work on that I'm writing for 97.5 The Fanatic on their website if you want to go check that out at 975thefanatic.com. I've already started to do some of my previews if you want a preview to my preview on here, but that will all get settled up in due time. And we'll also have a little bit of discussion about the time frame for injury returns, because a couple big injured Phillies are making some milestones. We kind of mentioned it in passing about Bryce Harper, Gene Segura, Zach Eflin today, but I want to break down exactly what's happening with them. So we will also have at some point an injury update in a full segment or two in one of our upcoming episodes this week. So a lot of big stuff coming from Locked On Phillies as we gear up for a second half playoff push. And by push, the Phillies are going to be pushing, but I'm also going to be pushing out the content. So make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing, throwing me those likes, following on Twitter, doing all that good stuff that keeps you locked in on Locked On Phillies. And I want to thank you again for making Locked On Phillies your first listen today. Now make your second listen the Locked On MLB podcast. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings humor, passion, and unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. So follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, I got to book it down to the stadium to watch this one in person, doing some post-game sound for the Atlanta Braves for a station down in Atlanta. So I'm going behind enemy lines again. And we'll have another one of those segments where I talk to you about inside the Braves locker room later this week. Another tease of something that's coming up. But I got to get rolling. So that's all for today's Locked On Phillies. And I will talk to you all tomorrow.